Welcome to episode 3 of Transitions to Greatness. When you know better, you do better. The purpose of this webcast is to provide a platform that elicits open and honest discussion in and around issues of education. Transitions believes it is important to address specific issues in order to challenge the complacent and stagnant thinking that sometimes clouds our thinking and our judgment. Our full intention is to promote personal and professional reflection, growth, and development. Today, we're speaking with Katrina Lee on the subject of trauma-informed instruction, and I'm so excited to have her and to discuss this topic. Katrina is the supervisor of special education for Charlottesville City Schools in Virginia. Katrina, thank you for joining us and welcome to our show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I have been so excited to talk about this topic. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am a 20-year educational veteran. It kind of lumps together when
it's running up on you, huh?
Absolutely. I've been in special education since I started my educational career. Started off as a special education teacher in elementary school. Then high school, and then did some state-operated programs with children in state hospitals with mental illness, and then on to the director and then a supervisor of special education. So it's my passion, it's my love, it's what I've done, and what I think I'll retire doing at some point one day.
Okay, well, that's a blessing. That's a blessing, and we know that our students and educators need you. So talk to us a little bit about trauma and trauma-informed instruction. Talk a little bit about what that is.
So you said trauma-informed instruction, correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So I think I would like to look at it as, and when we're working with students, assuming, and this is something that I tell all educators, we have to assume that everyone that we encounter has had some form of trauma. So informed trauma in working with our kids is just knowing that when our students come in the door each and every day, or even if they don't come in the door, understanding and realizing that we may be the only gatekeepers that will be the positive or negative influence in their life. So in schools, looking at trauma for students is looking at whether it be physical, mental, or any kinds of trauma that the students have had or experienced or are experiencing. As educators, we have to know those signs. We have to know those hidden signs. We have to know those overt signs with our students to be able to respond to them, because it's very important, because we could really be the ones who further damage and cause further harm and trauma to those students, or we could be the ones who could be the savior and identify and help the students along the way to start to heal.
Do you think that educators misinterpret trauma? Do you think that, you know, we identify it incorrectly sometimes? What does it look like? How do teachers, you know, distinguish between trauma and just a bad day?
Absolutely. I think that is a huge piece of education when we look at touches so many facets of disproportionality and discipline and so many other pieces. I think disproportionality in special education. So yes, I definitely think, you know, educationally this system has come a long way, but there's a lot of work to do with identifying traumas. It may look like a students who are shutting down, and in education, often teachers will look at that as being kind of the decodes that we're trying to take out of schools, you know, disrespect or defiance, or the students are just not wanting to do the work, or they're disengaged. And so those types of behaviors are, you know, shutting down or not talking or walking out of class. So many of the little subtle things that are big things for our students, I think that we as educators must do a better job of catching those signs, because students really show us even if they're not telling us. So behaviors are, I always say behaviors are language.
Yes.
And what is the body language telling us? Is it, you know, when we go and say, hey, you know, Katrina, how are you doing today? That's subtly a way that can trigger many students. So just being aware of so many of those triggers it's almost like, not almost, you have to be on at every moment and every second from the time the student enters your door to catch a read of them and where they are, for teachers. So yes, so much of the communication that our students show us, more so today, I think, than ever, is the unspoken word.
Yes, absolutely. I just, as you were speaking, just thinking about so many of the students that I had, I taught in an urban district, and just so many of the, just saying your tone can trigger, something, or, something happening in the morning and a student mentioning it can trigger. Just, I think that it's so common for teachers to misinterpret and to kind of blow it off as, you're acting out today. So what do you say to those teachers who are quick to say, oh, they're just in a bad mood today, or they're just being lazy today, or they find another excuse?
Right. I would say, one, figure out the first thing, that I tell teachers is that figure out why you're here.
Hmm.
Why are you here, and what is your passion? Because if your passion is to help students, that's great, and we can work with that. But if not, we can't have you here harming kids because they don't have time for it. So I would say for those teachers, figure out your why. And if your
Hmm.
why isn't strong enough, immediately find something else to do, because we don't have time to damage or traumatize or re-traumatize a student. And gauge when your students walk in. We can't be at our desk. I would say that's, some people see that as so small, but when I work with teachers, that's a must. You need to be at your door. I need to see that student. I need to see their eyes. You need to see their body language. You need to smell them. All of those things that seem small, because that's going to guide that child's day.
Yes.
And because, believe it or not, I would say that very much, I'm a statistic that could have gone another way, but it was because of teachers and educators. I have no idea how they knew, but they took
Hmm.
the time to pour into me. So I would say to teachers, new teachers, veteran teachers, seasoned teachers, just to take the time to look at the students when they come in. Take the time to get to know them. Instruction will come, and if students have a relationship with you and a bond, the learning will come. But if the relationship isn't there, you will never be able to reach that kid. So that's always been first and foremost for me. And being able to take the good with the bad. Some kids don't come with polished vocabulary and language, and they really may tell you like it is.
Hmm.
And that's okay. You have to build that safe space for them to grow, and to learn with you. So I think that's the relationships. I always say, I love, and I coined this phrase with every group: relationships over referrals. But you can't write referrals if you know what I mean. Relationship has to come first.
Absolutely.
So
I, that is so powerful. I agree with that statement so wholeheartedly, that you have to know your passion. Teaching is not for everyone.
no.
Teaching is not for everyone, and I have an inkling that you may have have seen and worked with some people that should not have been at the head of those classrooms,
Yeah.
because I would tell, as a teacher leader, I would tell my coworkers all the time, you can make or break a student's day. You can fill their cup, or you can start pouring out, negativity that will ruin their day. And see, children, they carry that with them for so long. So I absolutely agree that relationships and connections are so vitally important.
Absolutely.
That's very powerful. I
Absolutely.
was doing some, I'm sorry, go ahead, you were gonna say.
No, you go ahead.
Um, I was, in doing my research, about trauma-informed instruction, I came across trauma sensitivity. Trauma trauma-informed sensitivity. No, trauma sensitivity. What's the difference?
I think that sometimes we can be informed, we can become trauma informed and trauma aware. We have lots of workshops and we can know it, but the sensitivity to that is often it looks very different. An example that I could give, and I think would be the best way to explain it for me is um, for working with a teacher who had a student who came from a home that had some factors. It
Mm-hmm.
had some of those ACEs scores and those factors that were up there. And the student didn't have the cleanest smelling appearance,
Mm-hmm.
which made them turn inward because of all of the things that were going on. And instead of a teacher who had been through all the trauma-informed practices, all the
Excuse
trauma-informed,
me.
bless you,
Thank
um,
you.
all of those things that they should have done, it was, have you washed your coat?
Hmm.
And so the sensitivity of it is I'm aware and I know, but I'm not doing better. I'm not sensitive to the fact that you may not have what I had or may have in my home, a washing machine. A parent can even come home to wash.
Mm-hmm.
So being sensitive to those things, it's almost like when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely.
I can be informed, but you have to be sensitive and aware to those things. And, being sensitive to the touch,
Mm-hmm.
your voice. For students who've been sexually abused, you certainly don't want, to touch them in a certain way because you don't know what the trigger is.
Right.
Or domestic abuse,
Mm-hmm.
students, the home, the parental abuse. So all of those factors, you have to be sensitive and keen and aware beyond what the text says, beyond being informed, beyond, the
Right.
cultural responsive classroom. You have to be sensitive to the fact and know how to respond. I think that's where the disconnect so many times is for teachers who even I would say as early as last year, said, I went through the trauma-informed classes and I did all these things. And I said, well, why are your practices so different? Because this
Mm-hmm.
child and your interactions don't show that, like your response. And so I think that gets to the heart of the sensitivity of it. And the individual, she ended up in tears and saying like, wow, I've
Mm-hmm.
never had a kid like this. And it was just profound for me because she was speaking in her truth. And she really thought that because she had the classes, she had the certification in trauma-informed care, like she had it down pat.
Yeah.
She was not sensitive to the emotions of the children. And sometimes that's something that you can work with it and, hopefully you can teach it and grow teachers. They
Yeah.
don't, you can grow, I always say, we're going to grow you one way or the other.
That's right. That's right.
So I think that's the piece for me of the sensitivity that we have to practice that doesn't always go into practice and it doesn't translate into how we often see educators responding to children.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the book knowledge, you can have all of those things, but if you're not practicing, you're not being sensitive, or you're seeing that student, you're aware, or you put it on a mask and you're just kind of doing and going through the motions, you're
Yes.
truly not sensitive to what the student needs. And I think it's one of the huge kids know you and they
They
can
do.
read you and they can feel you and they can feel your passion. Like I said, I have a personal kid who had a teacher that probably should have been doing something totally different in her career. Um, and then a teacher in his short career of only second grade was very sensitive. And even though he didn't have the traumas, it was just relational,
Right.
the communication. So I tell teachers, be careful what you say because you could be the one truly to have that child being the rocket scholar, the engineer,
Yeah.
or the person that's under the bridge and they're homeless and they're struggling or just having bad situations. So
Sure.
this is not a profession that you take lightly. You don't get in it because it's
No.
easy to get a job or it's easy to get a provisional. This is life and death for our students, and it matters.
Right. Or for the breaks or the
Yeah,
holidays. Yeah. Yeah. It's bigger than that.
yeah,
So I hear you saying relationships and knowing how to empathize with
yes.
students is so important. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Can you share some strategies that our viewers can use to become more informed?
Sure, absolutely. I think just being genuine. What I've always thought is you have to know yourself first. So I would say to our teachers and to our educators is to first do an inventory of yourself and see what your strengths and your weaknesses are. There are tons of them out there. That you can truly do a personality inventory and see where your strengths are and your skills, and see who you. And people say, "Oh, I know who I am as a person," but just try it. Just do
Right.
it. That will really help you dig into the core of who you are and see where some of the implicit biases may be. It doesn't
Yeah.
always have to tie to race or anything like that. All of us have implicit bias, and figuring out how to work with those is key. So that would be the first thing that I would encourage people to do. I've done it, and I continue to grow in areas that I've acknowledged. That would be the first thing. And then I would say come in with an open mind, with realizing that everything in that lesson plan. I started off with the red lesson plan books a long time ago. We wrote it. But knowing that your lesson plan that you plan may go out the window, and it's okay if you're taking the time to build the relationships and communicate with your kids. So I would say that's one. And on day one, set the classroom as a culture. And it's okay if we mess up. You can always do it over. Be honest and genuine with your students. I found that is one of the best tools ever, because kids read you. And so being honest. And so really sitting down and starting that climate and culture on day one, and having that class meeting and telling them about you, and your nervousness as a teacher, as a brand new teacher. I think when we come in and we have our guns ablazing and we're ready to do it all right, and the kids are going to listen, I think that's a huge downfall sometimes.
Yes.
Because we don't all have it together, and just saying we're in this together and making a culture and a climate. This is our class. This is our community. These are the things that I value, and what do you value? And building that culture of the classroom and the climate together. And not always buying those, and I was guilty of it. Those school supply, the rules like do not talk, do not do, like all of those, throw them away, scrap them, and have that class community, that class meeting, and build that culture, and you build those norms together. These are the things that we value in our classrooms, because often the things that we value aren't always the things that our children have been brought and raised to value. It's just not right, wrong, or indifferent. So I would definitely encourage building that classroom together and realizing and embracing the differences in that classroom, and realizing and embracing, what the cultural norms are, what are the morals, what are the values, and that being your classroom set of norms. These are the values, these are the things that we value, as opposed to, like I said, I was guilty. I bought those things with my first year teacher money with the, $100, and I pasted them all up, but we learn. So I would say that would be the second thing. Another thing I would say is reaching out and getting to know each of your parents. Because we are truly in this together. And I think for me as a special educator, being in the contentious, sometimes meetings and things like that has really taught me that communication is communication. And whether a parent is having an eloquent conversation with words that I may want to hear, or they're saying things that, may not be the things that I want to hear, but they're talking to me. Having a relationship with that parent is huge. Because I'm a firm believer that I would say majority of our parents, most, don't send their children, they send the best that they have.
Right.
To school, to us, and they trust us. They trust us with their children. So getting to know the parents, having a relationship, talking about what the values are for the family, talking about what they expect of you. Because when you have that partnership, and I have to call you and say, hey, they're kind of like, so that your son or your daughter is struggling.
Yeah.
It's going to come across a lot easier.
Yes.
As opposed to someone that I don't have a relationship with.
Yes.
If I don't know you as my child's teacher, and that is a first call, I'm going to question whether you're truly vested. I know teachers especially now more so than ever, are just bogged down with so many things. And teaching is tough. It's always been tough, but especially in this climate right now. I would encourage that. And having also, in addition to that, one-on-ones with these kids. It doesn't take long. Sit
Mm-hmm.
down, have a one-on-one, 3 to 5 minutes while you're doing your reading group. Have them, and everybody doesn't have to know it, right? When you're doing your rotations, or you're doing your attendance, even in the Zoom land that you're doing, have a
Mm-hmm.
quick breakout, or something that says, I want to know more about you. I want to know, hey, do you play basketball? Do you
Right.
swim? Do you not participate in anything? Do you not participate? Do you want to participate in anything? And that's really how you get to know your student. And it doesn't take a long time. In 3 to 5 minutes, a child will tell you by saying and not saying so many things,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
learn to trust you. And I think that ties into being aware of the traumas, so that you can be an advocate for the child in your class, for each individual child. When you have a relationship, when students are struggling with things, they will tell you when they trust you.
Yes.
When
Yes.
they trust you, they will tell you. I've learned so many things about my students in that way, from being, homeless or the lights off, or
Mm-hmm.
parents, being abusive, by having a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that, it could be 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning. And if they needed to say, hey, my lights are off, can you come pick me up? Or, hey, my mom's intoxicated and she's having a rough time. Can you help me? So I would just encourage those relationships, and being honest with yourself, and being okay with not being perfect. We're
Yeah.
not perfect. We're going to mess up. And just being honest with your kids and saying, you know what? I messed up. And if you're having a really, really funky day, take time for yourself. Um, Take time for yourself, and know when it's okay to stay at home and say this is too much, because I'm dealing, because we all have personal lives. We
Yes.
don't live at school,
Yes.
and we are human, and we have to realize self-care is important, because you
Right.
can't be your best for the kids if you're not your best for yourself.
That's right.
Um, and so as teachers, I think, again, learning from being there, burning yourself out. We will be sick and come into school, we'll keep going and going and pushing and pushing, because I think it's the passion of what we want to do.
Right.
But take time for yourself. It's okay. Self-care is vital. It's just as vital as a relationship. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you surely can't be effective and be your best for the students. So you have to realize what comes first, and that's you as a teacher,
Yes.
the best for everybody. And home, and I always tell teachers, your family, whatever that may look like,
Yeah.
whatever that may look like, you have to keep your priorities in line, because if not, balance is important. And
Yes.
that's not pedagogy or anything like that out of an educational class, but you have to have balance, because when you're out of balance, it carries over into your profession, into the classroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My last question was going to be, what advice would you give? But you just laid it all out there. You just laid it all out there. I think that it's so important. Like you, I learned, um, later in my career how important reflection is, knowing and understanding who I am as an educator. And sometimes it's not it's not easy and it's not pretty. And I think that that is what holds teachers back from really looking at themselves. But it is so you learn so much about yourself. It's really gratifying. It's cathartic even, having that, you know, learning that about yourself, coming about yourself. So I really appreciate that you are saying that, and also, taking the time to step away, and taking care of ourselves, because students have trauma, but we do too.
Yes.
And sometimes we need to just take a break, rest our minds, and attend to ourselves, because like you said, we cannot attend to our students if we are not our best selves. And there was a point in my career when I was there and I couldn't figure it out, and I started reflecting, and you know, and it wasn't always negative, but whether it was negative or positive, I always tried to find the lesson in whatever was wrong. And that is so profound and powerful. That's an awakening.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an awakening.
Yes.
And so I truly appreciate you saying that, and just offering these strategies and all this important information. And I think that it's, whether subtle or really, you know, blatant in our faces, that there's so many students that are experiencing something, and we have to become aware of those signals, like you said. So,
Absolutely.
Katrina, I really want to thank you for your time today, and sharing all this. I truly can hear the passion in your voice.
It's been a
Um,
pleasure.
Absolutely. So with that, I just again want to thank you. And educators, we have a responsibility to be informed, to connect to our students. We have a responsibility to provide an equitable education to all of our students. It starts with us. So let's do better to be a part of the solution so that we can transition ourselves into the greatness that was meant for each of us and our students. It is they who deserve nothing less than that. So thank you, Katrina, again for being here, and thank you to all of our viewers for watching. We're going to keep striving to be better and do better because our greatness awaits. So thank you.